those were fun days. You know,
Yeah.
we had nothing. I mean, we didn't have any money to start with or anything. And actually, Helen and John, who were the instigators really, for Tonya, you remember Tonya Gorman?
Yeah.
She was going into first grade. So they really wanted that. And they had sold their house in Cornelius, moved into the community in Portland, and then lent the school like $1,000 or $2,000 or something to make whatever changes we needed to make. And they said, you know, if you can pay us back at some point, great. But if not, oh, well, it was worth it, you know. So, but most of the things, aside from new carpeting, since there was white carpet in there, we thought, yeah, not for little ones. And some lighting and stuff. We painted, and we made tables out of old closet doors and so forth, you know, and we got little plastic chairs from whatever, Home Depot or something, you know. And then Lynn Shirley and I went to yard sales all summer long, and we'd buy glue and scissors and construction paper and all that stuff for, you know, a quarter or whatever, really cheap. And we were not too far from the library, so I just go to the library every week and check out 30 books or something, and that's what we did.
Wow. So what was the room that you're starting it? It was in the Ananda Center?
Yes, it was, you know, I don't know if have you been in the temple there? There, you know, there's that side room. Originally it had been a mortuary. So this was like a side viewing room or something. And so they just kind of closed that off. There'd been big windows so you could sit in there and look out into the main sanctuary, but we just covered those and, you know, put in different carpet and so forth. And that was our first classroom for 2 years. Wow. And eventually we took a couple other rooms there. And then we got Angel House, which was on the other side of the block, but the backyards adjoined. So, and we still have that to use. And we had a couple classrooms over there and the office eventually.
So you started with the first grade and then you just went from there? You just kept expanding, or how did that work?
We started with kindergarten, first and second. And there were 7 kids when we started. We didn't know, 2 of them just came the last couple days before school started. We didn't know what was going to happen. And I had been teaching for Portland Public Schools, special ed teacher, and I had my contract and I had to either sign it or not sign it, you know. And at that point, we still didn't know whether we had enough students to make it work. And finally I said, well, I'm just going to go for it and, you know, refuse my contract. And if the school doesn't work out, I'll figure it out, you know. Fortunately, wow. I just had myself to worry about. So I thought, and Helen and John said, well, we'll make sure you get food at dinner at least once a week, you know. So anyway, that's what we did.
Wow.
And yeah. So, and then we just added a grade until we got up to 6th grade, I think. And then we went K through 6 for a while. And then eventually we added on preschool. And initially, Usha wasn't very thrilled with that idea because she was thinking of the California regulations, and it's a big production to have a preschool. But in Oregon, if it's not a daycare, it's a preschool, hardly anything that you have to do special. I mean, you have to have a small toilet, I think, and sink that the kids can reach, but really it's not, it's way, way easier than she was anticipating. So we did that. And at a couple different times through the years, we went up through 8th grade.
Wow. And
so
it was just the 3 of you teachers, or?
Well, initially I was the teacher. Usha was doing half-time administrative stuff. And so I was teaching the classes, and then Helen kindly volunteered 3 mornings a week to help with the kindergartners. I had 3 kindergartners, 2 first graders, and 2 second graders.
Wow.
And the other one you might know, Claire Potter. Do you know her?
Yep.
She was in kindergarten that first year.
Wow, amazing.
So yeah. So and then the next year, Helen came on as our kindergarten teacher, and she had just kindergarten, and then I had first, second, third, and I had those 3 grades for a number of years.
So it all
I
kind
think maybe. Oh,
it
I
was
was
all
going to
just,
say, I think it was maybe the 3rd or 4th year, David Eby came and taught for a couple of years with us.
oh, wow.
And then when he left and went to California, to the village, we've had a couple other teachers in there too along the way. And anyway, it worked out.
Sounds very organic, the process of it all happening. It wasn't like you had a business plan and it was all mapped out. It was just sort of, just providing
Winging
what
it.
was needed. Yeah.
Yeah, for who we had. And actually, Helen had gone to a wedding the weekend before school was starting and met somebody and who said, "Oh, that sounds perfect for my daughter who's going into first grade. Sign me up."
Wow.
So it was just, a lot of it happened like that. Yeah.
Was it hard to convince the parents, or were all the parents sort of wanting this type of education in the first place?
Well, I think from that first group, people wanted it.
Yeah.
As when they heard about it, knew something about it, then they were eager for it. We've had times through the years when parents were not so attuned. They'd want their kids to come there, but then they wanted it to be what they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And that didn't work out because we felt like we knew what our mission was, and that's the kind of school we were going to have. And if that worked for them, terrific. And if it didn't, then they needed to find what would work for them.
How important do you think that is, what you just said about you as teachers? You knew what your mission was, or you knew what it was that you wanted to do. How important is that for teachers who want to start, in a school with the Education for Life principles?
I think it's critical. Maybe I don't know, a few years in, we ended up getting a bunch of kids from a school that closed, and it had been started actually by a group of parents who hired a teacher, and they all knew what they didn't want for their kids. What they didn't know is what they did want, really. And so as long as that one teacher was there, it kind of worked out pretty well. But then when they needed to have a different teacher, there wasn't a real framework there. It was based around the teacher's personality. But having guiding principles makes a huge difference. Then you can survive the transition from teacher to teacher, from student to student, administrator to administrator, because you've got a framework.
And where were you guys really drawing those principles from? Because I remember in your questionnaire, you did talk about the book, but you mentioned Swami even said that the book was just sort of an outline and it was up to you to expand upon his ideas. Could you, where were you guys drawing from?
I think basically from the book initially. I mean, he wrote it in '86, so we didn't start the school till '97. And he'd actually, I think 97 or 98, he revised it quite a bit. And, but, Usha had been teaching at the village, and I had taken a workshop there, which didn't help me all that much, because actually I was used to teaching either older kids, like high school age kids, or special ed kids of all ages, but whatever. And at the beginning, after school started our very first year, I was kind of freaking out and going, I don't know if I know what it means to be an Education for Life teacher. I'm grasping at straws here. I mean, I knew some of the things like the stages and the tools and specific gravity, but I hadn't really had that much experience with them. And fortunately, Usha, being the wise person that she can be, suggested I go down to the village and spend a day or two with Narani, which I did. And it just really helped me relax. I realized it's like, okay, I'm not going to be the same as Nirani. And who else? Somebody else I visited several classrooms, but I thought, I'm not going to be like they are, but I can be an education for life teacher the way I am. And so that was just so helpful. And then later on, Usha was always interested in teacher education and so forth. So for a number of years, we would have in-person workshops in Portland, sometimes over several weekends, and sometimes people from Seattle or California came or whatever, wherever. But helping to organize that and put it together and teach some of the classes. You know, anytime you teach something, you realize what you know and what you don't about it. And having to find ways to explain it to people really strengthened my understanding of it all. And then, of course, just being in the classroom, I mean, if you're going to do it, you have to do it, and you learn because the kids are your teachers. You're their teacher, they're your teachers.
How important do you find that, like, let's say, for example, for new teachers who want to get into EFL, how important is it for them to either spend some time around other EFL teachers or to touch in with them, maybe even to have maybe join a program or an online offering or something where they can sort of have some exposure to other EFL teachers? Do you feel like that would be an important thing for them, or?
Very. And it makes a difference if they're people who've already taught for a while, because they've had, you know, your first year of teaching always is like, I don't know, jumping into boiling water or something. You just swim as fast as you can and try not to scream, but no. And it's wonderful at the same time. I mean, it totally is, but it's very intense. And if teachers have kind of been through that phase, but they want a better understanding, more tools, a different way of looking at education, it's one thing. If it's somebody who's never taught at all, it's just a different situation. You want to give them all the education for life tools that you can. And you also know that some kind of, preferably an internship would be the best. I know they do that in Palo Alto, and I think that's kind of the ideal, where it's magnetism too. You know, if you're around several, preferably education for life teachers, then you get a sense of what's education for life and what's this personality, you know. So and having somebody to talk to, I think that, you know, we taught later for a number of years online classes.
Yeah.
And that was good, I think. I mean, it was what we could do for people who were too far away to come. And at the same time, it wasn't, I think, as powerful as being able to be there. I think for people who actually, we always had homework that involved trying things with their students or children or whoever it was. If they really did that and then used that as a self-educating tool, that was a big help to them. Not everybody did, of course. All the same, I just felt like it wasn't, well, for me at least, I'm much more of a personal sort of learner. You know, if I can watch somebody do it, if I can feel what they're, and then if they can give me little explanations of why they did this in this situations, because sometimes you're just watching somebody and they respond one way with one student, and then it'll seem like very similar circumstances with another student, and they'll respond very differently. And if they can just say, well, I did that because da 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 da, then you go, oh, okay, I get that.
Yeah, I love that. Just remembering that idea of mentorship and how important that is. And Ari Yvonne was mentioning to me just recently that during the EFL conference, this idea came up of having some of the older, more established EFL teachers maybe do like an online mentoring program with some of the newer teachers who are going to start studying the philosophy and signing up for the database, and there could be some kind of mentorship program that happens there. I think that would just be amazing.
Yeah, it would be very helpful, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear that you think that's important. Maybe you could be one of the mentors.
Perhaps. Well, actually, we've got at the Portland School this fall, we've got Melissa Hart, who's been teaching with us for, I don't know, a number of years, and she's going to teach the kindergarten class. But our preschool teacher is somebody new, and the kindergarten assistant is somebody new. So they both know essentially nothing about Ed for Life, although they seem, one thing we always look for in teachers, if we can't get somebody who's, you know, a trained EFL teacher, which pretty much we never can. So, but we always look for somebody at least who has some kind of spiritual practice. It doesn't have to be ours, but some kind, because if you don't have that, it makes it hard to, well, everything about life is harder, I think, but yeah.
True.
But it just helps you understand the principles, I think, a little more easily,